Welcome to Amplify, the personal brand business show. Today on the show, Bob is speaking with Rich Brooks.
Lean into your strengths. If you don't like the way that you appear on camera and you're always self-conscious about it, then maybe that's just not the right channel for you. But maybe there are other ways. Maybe it's an audio-only podcast. Maybe you're an excellent writer, whatever it may be. Maybe you hire people who are much more comfortable on camera. There are other ways of getting the words out. So I don't think that people listening feel like, this is what Rich Brooks says. You've got to be out there and presenting and doing video. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it works for me.
Hi there, and welcome back to the Personal Brand Business Show. My name's Bob Gentle, and every week I speak with incredible people who share their secrets to building, marketing, and monetizing their expertise and the mindset you need for your business to grow and thrive. If you're new to the show, then while you still have your device in your hand, take a second to subscribe. And for the Apple Podcast users, it's the super discreet plus icon in the top right-hand corner. They made that so easy to find, didn't they? And if you're on YouTube, you know what to do, but do it while you're there. So this week, I am really excited to speak to Rich Brooks. Rich, welcome to the show.
Bob, thank you for having me.
So what you don't know, you might know a little bit, but I had Katie Brinkley on the show, and Katie and I were speaking and saying,
oh, nice.
You need to have Rich Brooks on the show. And it probably wasn't for the reasons that it now is, because I told Katie I was looking at doing some speaking and some summits and things like that. She said, you need to speak to Rich Brooks. And I don't usually hustle, and I haven't mentioned this to you before. But what I found was something I never expected to find, which is a marketer, or somebody who runs a marketing agency rather, walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It's a really unusual thing, and that's what I wanted to get into today. So Rich, maybe before I go too far, could you maybe just start by telling us a little bit about who you are, where you are, and what you do?
Sure. Thank you. So my name's Rich Brooks, and I started a digital agency, although I didn't call it that back then, almost 27 years ago, just about a month shy of 27 years, called Flyte New Media. And we're a digital agency located in Portland, Maine, which is the top right corner of the United States. And we do it all: branding, design, web design, search engine optimization, social media, paid search, paid social, all that good stuff. And we've been doing that for a while for both local and national companies. About 12 years ago, I started this other brand, which we call the Agents of Change. And if Flyte is kind of a done-for-you agency, the idea of Agents of Change was, how do we make everybody who wants to be the best digital marketer they can be? So through in-person conferences that we have in Portland, Maine, annually, as well as a podcast that is about 525 episodes at this point, I meet with other marketers, I talk with them, and just kind of share their ideas with our audience. And been doing that now for over a decade. So that's the gist of what I do these days.
So people who listen to the show regularly will know I typically don't have what I would call traditional agency owners on the show. I have a lot of people who maybe bring a specific slice of what an agency will often do, specialists, but actual agency owners, I don't entertain them. But what I love about what you're doing is it's not that often I meet people who have more podcast episodes out than I do. That's a fairly new thing that I can say that. But I'm at 250 or so, 525. That's a good 10 years. That's a long time for a podcaster.
Yeah.
Similarly, your team and yourself, your content creators, you've written a book, you have the conference and events and a virtual summit, which we'll speak about. Most people who run agencies don't do those things. They avoid an awful lot of those things. And if they do start them, they don't sustain them. And I'm interested to hear from you why you started them, what impact they've had, and how you sustain them, more importantly. Maybe we take those one by one. What was it that led you to think, in a business that's traditionally fairly local, digital agencies often are, what led to you thinking a podcast would be a good idea? And I guess what impact has that had on your business over the years?
A great question. So I would say a lot of that came down to both attending Blog World, which was an event no longer in existence, but I was pulled into that world, and going to Blog World, and the company that started Blog World ended up buying like podcast conference as well. So I got to meet a lot of content creators back in the day. I mean, this is like, I don't know, 2009, 2010, like around that time, maybe even earlier. People were blogging and getting into podcasting. So I became aware of podcasting. I did try my hand at it before this podcast, didn't love it. And then I met Mike Stelzner, who is the head of Social Media Examiner, and he was basically a mentor to me for several years. I still look to him for advice. And he had gotten big into podcasting, and other friends of mine were doing podcasting. So I thought I'd give it another chance. And I don't know that I thought I would actually get to episode 500 when I first started. It was just basically a few different ideas. One is I do love having conversations about marketing. Like I'm fascinated by it. I like talking to other people, especially when I get a chance to interview them. So that was very beneficial as well. And I had already started the Brand the Agents of Change First as a conference. So I felt like, okay, now's the time to start a podcast. I need to start creating content on a regular basis beyond just the blog. And so it just became this thing where it was this weekly conversation. And at first it was mostly just talking to people I was friends with in the industry, people I'd met at different events. And then I started to kind of reach outside of my comfort zone and connect with other people. I think at a certain point, like a snowball rolling downhill, it almost becomes hard to stop. Like, it's like, why would I want to stop this podcast that's connected me with so many brilliant minds, that's acted as a feeder to my own conference? We don't have a call for speakers. I just look at the last year or two of guests on my podcast. I know that they deliver the goods, so then I ask them if they want to come to Maine and be part of the conference. So I think it served a lot of value there. And to your point, digital agencies do tend to attract more of a local audience, especially if you're like me and you go out and you do local events and speak locally. The podcast, though, is really more national or even global. And I'm not saying this like I'm a big deal, but just like I know that people in other parts of the country, other parts of the U.S., other parts of the world tune in. Like I remember there was a period of time when people would take screenshots of them listening to the podcast in different parts of the world, which I thought was fascinating. So that part of it definitely expanded who we could work with. And we have some of our biggest clients in terms of like the client lifetime value rate. Some of our biggest clients came through the podcast. They heard the podcast. They weren't happy with their current agency, or they were doing everything in-house. And basically they said, is this something you could help with? And so I said, sure. It's like, I've got a team of people. We can take care of this. And that's turned out to be, I wouldn't say it's like all of our business comes from that. I think still most of it comes locally, but we definitely have raised our profile and attracted new audiences who we never would have been in front of if we didn't have that podcast.
I think a lot of people, when they hear about a podcast, they make assumptions that people start podcasts because of the audience that people assume that it will build. And a lot of podcast audiences are quite small. One of the things you touched on was the relationships the podcast allows you to create. It's almost a catalyst for relationships. You're forced outside your comfort zone to connect with new people all the time. And those relationships have a tremendous effect over time. They really compound up. And I'm interested to hear from you, sort of outside of the audience side of things, people who hear the podcast, what opportunities have trickled back to you through those opportunities that you've built, those relationships rather you've built over the year.
Yeah, well, like I said, it is a great way for me vetting potential speakers for my own conference. So that kind of like takes a lot of the guesswork out of that. It's also definitely developed long-lasting relationships. When it used to be pre-COVID, and I would go out and I would do speaking gigs around the country, and I'd meet with people, but then there wasn't Zoom all the time, right? We weren't always jumping on Zoom calls. That having that ability to connect with people via the podcast became a way of kind of strengthening those weak ties. And then very often they would be inviting me back onto their podcast. I'd be getting in front of their audiences. Very often it would lead to me getting speaking gigs, both free and paid gigs, because I like to go out and speak. It's one of my favorite ways to share ideas. So those were all reasons why the podcast, other benefits to having the podcast as well. So I think it also helps establish my credibility. And even when I'm the host, like you, I try to put the spotlight on my guest. I don't talk a lot during the show. I just kind of let the conversations happen. But at the same time, when you're being associated with all these big names who come through your virtual studio, it definitely lifts your visibility as well. And so I think that's kind of another big benefit. You just start to position yourself as an expert, whether you meant to or not. And very often when I would go to events in my industry, in the digital marketing industry, nobody cares that I run a digital agency. Like, that's not that cool to them. But it's like, oh, you've got a podcast. Oh, you're hosting a conference. That's a little bit different. That's a little bit more interesting, and it's something to talk about.
I think you're absolutely right. From a personal branding perspective, a large part of how people judge us is by the company we keep. And if that keeping of quality company is visible, it allows people to shape in their own minds the stories that they tell themselves about us. It's quite discreet, but it's very potent over a long period of time.
Absolutely. I see that happening time and time again. I know years ago I went to a blog world that was taking place in New York, and there was a new guy on the scene, and he actually hosted a rooftop party at a bar. And I attended it, and he had hired a professional photographer. And I remember I was with Mike Stelzner, and Mike said, this is really a brilliant idea, because he's taking pictures with all these established people within the industry. When he shares those on social media and other places, he is immediately at their level.
Yeah.
And I know the first year when I had my conference, I had Chris Brogan and Derek Halpern and Amy Porterfield speak. And of course, I had pictures taken of us together on stage, and that just raised my profile. Maybe not to their level, but it definitely, it showed people that this is the area that he's playing in now.
Yeah, it's making regular contributions into this brand bank account. And that does impact people over time. I think another thing that I have really enjoyed about your business is I see a lot of agencies, and you might have one person who's fairly confident to be visible in that business. But a lot of employees in those businesses aren't willing to invest of themselves in the organization's visibility. In your business, I'm obviously not seeing everybody present in your content, but you have a lot of very active participants. And I'm curious to hear from you how you facilitate that, encourage it, train it, incentivize it, or if it's just natural talent that was accidental in the business. But how does that actually happen?
Yeah, I think that's something that's happened more in the past few years than it happened in the past. And part of this was, I've been doing this, like I said, nearly 27 years, and what people are willing to share online of themselves has drastically changed over that time. And I have a number of people who have been with me almost since the beginning, and they're not necessarily comfortable being in front of the camera, whatever that may mean, or being on stage. Like, it's just not their role. They like to design, they like to code, they like to manage projects. They do not seek the limelight. But as we've kind of developed a bigger part of our business around the digital marketing, around paid search SEO, and I brought in these people who really focus on individual things, especially the younger people, I've really been trying to get them to come out of their shell, be a little bit more visible. I used to write all the blog posts for the website. I realized, A, I can't do that anymore, and B, it's stifling my team. So almost everybody contributes to the blog at one point or another. They get a little bio. A couple of people on the team, I'm really pushing them to do more speaking events, like getting on a panel or taking one of their blog posts and turning it into a presentation. One of the guys on my team who has really kind of approached this with gusto is my digital marketing manager, John Paglio. And John is now going out and doing presentations. And he's actually going to be part of the virtual summit that we're putting on, which I know we'll talk about in a minute. But he said to me the other day, he's like, I just don't feel like I should be part of this group. Like, you've got John Lee Dumas and John Chance and Kim Garson, all these people speaking. And then it's like, who am I? Who knows me? And I said to him, like, everybody starts somewhere. Like, nobody starts being a superstar. It's like you put in your time and effort. And the bottom line is you just being associated with all these people, like we were just talking about, automatically raises your profile. But on top of that, we were at a local event the other day for a group called Visit Portland, kind of a CVB here in Maine. And I noticed we were working the booth together. All the people were coming up to talk to him, not to me. And that was kind of a first. And I had to put my ego aside and be like, that's awesome. That's awesome that people have seen him speak. They saw him talk about GA4, whatever it is. And all of a sudden it's like, Flyte is more than just Rich Brooks.
Yeah.
Flyte is now Rich Brooks and John Paglio, and hopefully more and more people over time, as they can see the depth and breadth of the expertise of my team and not just myself. We've joked in the past. One of my past employees said, there is out there a cult of rich, and we need to prevent against that. And it's like one of these things where it's like, how do you, if you are the agency owner in this particular case, how do you balance promoting your brand versus promoting yourself? Because they're more attracted to a person than they are to a brand, unless that brand is like Apple, Nike, or Coke or something. But for most of us running businesses, people don't care about Flyte New Media. They don't care about the Agents of Change as much, but they know Rich Brooks. So how do I kind of find that balance where I can raise the brand's identity by raising the members of my team? So it is something for the people on my team who are comfortable or maybe even a little uncomfortable about it. I'm trying to get them to be more comfortable because they do have something worth sharing. And I'm at the stage of my career where I really want to lift everybody on my team up, whatever that looks like to them.
Yeah. I think for me, I used to run essentially a very similar business to yours. And you would get hired by a company that was often founded by a fairly charismatic leader. A lot of companies or businesses that do well often do well because there was one person who was super well connected. He was loved. They were, I don't know if they were golfers or they were playing tennis, or they were just super nice people. And that business would get successful to the point where the business owner would think, you know what? I need to grow. I need something else to happen here because I can't scale my charisma any further. And so they would try and hire somebody to come in and wave the marketing wand. And I would often wish for them that they would simply extend their leadership into showing other people how to do what they were doing because it worked so well. And you knew it would work well for the others. And when I see that happening, it's a special thing. Obviously, the marketing stuff works. Local SEO works. More broadly, SEO works. All kind of marketing works. But nothing works quite as well as amplifying charisma. And that's what I love to see.
I haven't heard that phrase before, amplifying charisma, but that makes a lot of sense.
I may have just made it up right now. So I think what it would be nice to do now is, I know I have you here. I could not talk about this. One of the things that you're also leveraging in your agency, and I imagine for your clients by extension, is leveraging content in a very neat way to support the search engine optimization of your business in some counterintuitive ways, or non-obvious, maybe rather than counterintuitive. And one of the ways I've seen you doing this is what you've called Flyte School, which I really liked, which is the sort of webinar educational content stacked in there, self-service for free on the website. I am interested to know from you how intentional that was, and maybe for the listener, expand on what that strategy is on the website, if it's even strategic.
Yeah, I think basically, we call it Flyte School, which is a little catch-all for us on anything that we're doing that's educational. And I think that all businesses are well served by educating their customers. We talk about, some people call it a sales funnel, other people call it the customer journey. I prefer the customer journey because I like to keep the focus on the people we're serving rather than ourselves. But the idea is, and I learned this early on, the more you educate people, you are also positioning yourself as a thought leader. And by doing it in your voice and developing your voice and your brand, you're also attracting the right type of clients, while at the same time pushing away the wrong type of clients. And if you've been in business for more than 5 minutes, you've already met the wrong type of clients. The people who, when they call you, literally your stomach drops and you're like, oh, I can't even deal with this person. So I think it's important for us to be educating people and position ourselves like, here's how we think about email marketing, or here's how we think about SEO, or here's how we think about installing Windows in a commercial building, whatever it is. That you're educating people, that they get to know who you are, the whole know, like, and trust factor. And so it is strategic, although not like in some evil plotting way, but more like, let's put some content out there. And so that the people who are on their journey trying to figure out, how do I generate more leads online? How do I improve my search engine ranking? How do I get more conversions at my website? Whatever it may be, are more likely to find us. And some of that is through search engine optimization because we offer it. So we definitely think about it quite a bit. In fact, SEO is like one of my favorite parts of digital marketing, is what are the searches that people are doing? How can we answer their questions? But also, because not everybody thinks about SEO, we then, of course, promote these content bits through social media. I know you discovered this year we decided we were going to do some more long form video, not super long, but like 5 or 10 minutes with a more professional feel. We partnered with a video production company in town to do that video and another one that's coming out. So I think it's more about just developing that content that attracts the right kind of people and helps along the journey, because the more they see you and those webinars and the videos we talked about, they see you and they hear your voice and they see how you behave, and either they like you or they don't. But if they like you, they're going to be more likely to reach out to you and be like, I'd like to hire you to redo our branding or our website or whatever it may be.
I think what's fascinating for me is I time shift myself back to my local agency days. And in my geographic area, people didn't really know the people who ran these agencies. The agencies had great brands, but the people behind those agencies were kind of hidden, and people liked it that way. I imagine to a large extent, it's mostly still like that. And I put myself in the shoes of the potential customer in the greater Maine area. And I think, okay, I need to hire an agency. Who am I going to pick? I Google around, I discover you. Fair enough. The SEO is working. But like you said, I can build a relationship with you before I've ever met you. And that is such a powerful competitive advantage, because people can decide, you know what, I don't like that Rich Brooks. He's too full of himself. Or that Rich Brooks, he's my guy. They get to decide before they meet you. There's an interesting phenomena in psychology. We don't like going places we've never been before. We don't like meeting new people. So if we can create a line of least resistance towards, I've met this person at an unconscious level, the odds of you converting that into a relationship, they just skyrocketed. And it's such a powerful strategy. It's simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean most people do it. And in your experience locally, are you finding agency land, if you like, still resists that level of personal visibility?
So I guess when I think about the local agency scene here in Greater Portland, there's definitely some people who have either the agency owner or members of their team are out there doing lunch and learns, doing presentations, that sort of thing. They're very active. So there are those people who are like me, but there are a lot of agency owners that don't. And I don't necessarily think that you have to put yourself out there. I think it helps. But I believe that there's 100 different ways of growing an agency or growing a business. I mean, it doesn't have to be about an agency, because all of the things we're talking about today also work in almost any other kind of business, and that's why a lot of people name their businesses after themselves. It's just they put themselves first and foremost, at least from a branding standpoint and a connection standpoint. I feel comfortable on stage. I feel comfortable in front of the camera. I love sharing ideas with people in a format like this. So it's easy for me. I have no problems with it. Other people, they may be more introverted. They may not feel like they're comfortable on camera. They may not like being in front of an audience. They have to find other things. So I think the most important thing is, when it comes to promoting your business, is finding out where your strengths lie and really always lean into your strengths. If you don't like the way that you appear on camera and you're always self-conscious about it, then maybe that's just not the right channel for you. But maybe there are other ways. Maybe it's audio-only podcast. Maybe you're an excellent writer, whatever it may be. Maybe you hire people who are much more comfortable on camera. There are other ways of getting the words out. So I don't think that people listening feel like, this is what Rich Brooks says. You've got to be out there and presenting and doing video. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it works for me. Your thing might be about niching down, where you are a agency that only serves bakeries or something like that. Whatever it is, whatever your niche is, I think it's just about finding that differentiation. My differentiation is my ginormous ego and desire to be the center of attention when I get on stage, but other people have maybe something completely different. So I think you really just, whatever your business is, play to your strengths, where there's a Venn diagram where it overlaps on where your customers are going on their customer journey.
So I'm going to segue to a completely different question then. And for me, it's always interesting to hear people's responses to this. Now, I'll just jump into it. So opportunity, it can come to our business through one of 4 doors. It can come through ads. It can come through content and content marketing. It can come through relationships, or it can come through outbound sales. Those are really the only 4 routes that I've discovered. There might be some other weird ones. In your business, what does that typically look like? Which door is the one people most frequently come in through?
Excellent question. I think it ebbs and flows. So I don't know that there's one specific one. I know that the conference we put on is a big driver because a lot of times when I ask people, hey, how have you heard about us? They'll say, well, I've actually attended the Agents of Change for years, but it's only now that I'm ready for a new website or SEO. So that's definitely one channel. Another channel is my visibility on the local scene. I'm also the tech guru on the local evening news programs on the NBC affiliates here in Maine. So once a month I go on TV and I talk about, rarely does it have anything to do with business. Recently I was talking about how to protect your online accounts through 2FA and other methods. I've talked about how to take better pictures with your smartphone. I mean, it's nothing related to my business, but once a month I get to go on TV for 5 minutes. They talk about my business. They link to it from the local stations. Like, that's huge, right? So those kind of things increase my visibility. And then some people, it's like I literally Googled, Google ads in Maine, and your company came up, so I'm talking to you. So I think I don't know that there's one path that beats all the other paths. So in my mind, the best thing to do is increase our visibility as much as possible through the channels our audience are most likely to take. But one of the reasons why I love doing public speaking, whether it's at my own conference or even better at somebody else's, is because when I'm doing SEO, at best, I'm one of 10 possible answers on that webpage, right, on the Google homepage. If I'm sending out an email, I'm competing with all the other emails in the inbox. Don't even get me started on the competition in social media. So, but when I'm on stage or when any of my people are on stage, there's no other competition. The people in that room only see one expert. They only hear one perspective. They either buy in or they don't buy in. But often you're on a literal stage, you're elevated above the audience, and that gives you that vibe of this person must have earned his way onto the stage, or in my case, onto TV. So there's already this built-in authority that comes with it. So for me, I've seen us generate a lot of business when I can get out on stage and speak. And often at conferences I'm trying to get into are conferences that are not about digital marketing. They're for financial advisors, or they're for people with hospitality businesses, and they bring in possibly one or more digital marketers to talk on a specific topic. That's a great place for me to go out and get new business.
That's a really good answer. And I think what I love about your answer from an agency perspective, it's a hygienic answer. A lot of people have tremendous imbalance. They say, oh, it's all coming through referrals, or it's all coming through ads, or it's all outbound. And then there's a 10% across a few other things. With you, it sounds like it is unusually healthy, which I really enjoy.
Well, you never know when one channel is going to close down. Google changes its algorithm, Facebook changes its algorithm, and suddenly that channel has been closed off to you. So the more sticks you have in the fire, the more you'll be able to weather any storm that's going to come. And having recently gone through a pandemic and the constant upheaval in the politics in my own country, I'm always ready for something to mess up my best laid plans.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that conversation. That's a good pivot into the summit then. Nothing like a little bit of there's a vague political connection there that I could go through, but I won't. So you have the Agents of Change Virtual Summit coming up. And again, this is not something agencies necessarily need to do. So where does that fit within your strategic landscape?
Yeah, so part of it is my desire to always challenge myself to do new things. So like we talked about, I've been doing the conference. We're coming up on our 10th annual in-person event. We've been doing the podcast for a decade, over 500 episodes. One thing we hadn't done in the past is a virtual summit. We did it once because we were planning for a different brand we had at the time, a local event, and then we were planning it for March of 2020. So, of course, that went away, and we ended up doing that virtually, but it was kind of like an impromptu Zoom call for 2 days. That's how we basically ran it. This is a little bit more involved. But I loved the idea of doing the conference, but the conference tends to be very much a local play, and I also wanted to kind of expand that to the whole world. So I had been part of Katie Brinkley, you mentioned her, part of her summit last year, and I ended up meeting and interviewing the woman who she had hired. I hired her for my own summit, and we decided we're going to do this. Now, I am not suggesting that this is a great idea because, to be honest, the amount of hours that I myself am putting into the summit, there is no ROI. So please don't ask any questions it's terrible. But the plus side is I met with 70 speakers who wanted to apply to have a speaking gig on this. We did do a call for speakers for this one. I went with 30 of them. I've had great conversations. I found new guests for there's a lot of value that I'm getting as well as that we'll be providing as well. But I wanted to have something that was visual that people could tune into live for free. Like if they have no budget, if their boss is never going to approve it, they can sit there with me. I will be live for 3 days and just kind of talking through everything with all these recorded sessions. Great. But then we also have some VIP packages that'll help us cover all the costs and maybe some of our time if we're lucky. And so 30 days. And again, you mentioned like the idea of specialists versus generalists. You tend to be attracted to specialists. Running an agency, I have to be a generalist. But through my podcast and through life, I've met all these specialists. So I bring in somebody who's a specialist on CRO. I bring in somebody who's a specialist on GA4, SEO, whatever it is. And I think I've curated a really well-rounded year one virtual summit that people can tune into and hopefully get a lot of value out of. And then we have all these VIP upgrades and some really cool giveaways as well. So people who are really looking to take their marketing to the next level, I think they'll find some great options in there.
I think that's a really good idea because agencies often can be accused of not really showing what's on the menu. I think they get hired and the work is kind of tucked away. You wait to see the results of it. I think a lot of agencies might be a little bit scared of sharing. Sharing is the word I'm looking for.
And sharing that they don't have all the answers.
Yes.
And I think that's a big problem too. It's like, I think a lot of people, and I've struggled with this, but I overcame it. The idea of like, well, listen, if I bring in an Instagram expert, that means I am not the Instagram expert. If I bring in an SEO person, and we talk about SEO all the time, we pride ourselves on our SEO skills. Why am I asking anybody outside my agency to talk about SEO?
Yeah.
Well, my feeling is because we want more perspectives, because we don't have all the answers. And one of the things that we consider to be one of our differentiators when it comes to local agencies is this virtual Rolodex I built up over the years, where like if we hit a wall and we just like, we were having a problem with some Facebook store the other day, we could not figure it out. I turned to a couple Facebook experts and they put me in touch with somebody who's a Facebook store expert so that we get these questions. And we told the client, it's like, we're out of our depth here, but we know somebody, we're going to bring them in. We'll get some answers for you. We'll see what we can get done. And for a lot of our clients, because we built trust with them already, they think this is a great advantage that I can bring in ringers whenever I need to help them through some sticky situations.
I think as well, this is the true mark of an expert, is not necessarily thinking that you have all the answers, but knowing you don't have all the answers and being well connected enough to know who to ask when you don't have all the answers. That's tremendously valuable. And a lot of people could be accused of being, well, I think when you're in a scarcity mindset, and a lot of agencies are operating in a scarcity mindset, it's quite natural. But if you have the connections in the network, it's tremendously valuable, and it does almost counter the scarcity mindset.
I think building those relationships is critical to your growth. I mean, I've hired some of these experts to come in and help us through situations like this. But then I also position myself, oh, look, social media. If you have any clients who need help with paid search or SEO or website design, send them our way. And that has worked as well. So a lot of times these have mutual benefits to both sides.
So I'm going to take a risk here. And I'm going to say the person who's helping you with the summit, does their name start with J?
Yes, Jetty Wright.
She is awesome. I have been on a few of her summits. She is so well organized, it's frightening. I didn't want to, I would have deleted that part of the interview if it wasn't Jenny. But Jenny's a machine, but she will have you working, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
What kind of upgrades do you have in mind for people? What can people, obviously it's a free summit. Content is free.
Yes.
But if people want...
It's free to attend, yeah. So you can watch all 3 days with me, and I will be there all 3 days live talking through everything. But the first VIP upgrade, which we're calling our Marketing Navigator upgrade, that includes all the sessions on demand for a full year. It includes all the transcripts, the summaries of each one, the slide decks for each one, and the audio downloads. Because I know, like me, a lot of people like listening to this in their commute or at the gym, what have you. So you get all that. Plus, we have a sponsor named Market Muse. They're fantastic. They have an AI-powered SEO tool that I use regularly, that my team uses to help us optimize a lot of the pages that we create content for. They're giving 3 months of their software at the premium level as a giveaway to everybody who gets this level. It's $3,000. So you spend $149 US and you get over $3,000 worth of value for that. And then for the next level up, we have a VIP ticket called the Marketing Mastery Pass. And that one has everything I mentioned already, plus most of the speakers have contributed either memberships, courses, masterclasses, so on and so forth, over $9,000 of value. And that's $299 US. So really two amazing deals. If you can't afford it, you're still going to get a lot as long as you tune in live. But for those people who really want to watch and rewatch some of the sessions, as well as take advantage, some of these people are putting on Ask Me Anything masterclasses. For that level, you should definitely check out some of those VIP passes.
What I love about that, knowing the way Katie organizes things, that's probably more intimacy than most people would get in an in-person conference. Additionally, you don't get that kind of upgrade in a traditional conference. That's a lot of value. I really like that.
Yeah, when they offer that to me, I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, no, that's totally fine. I'm like, great. I am going to run with this.
So when is that again? When is the summit?
The event will take place April 24th through the 26th, and it'll be basically, I think I get on at 8:45 a.m. East Coast time, and then we go right up until 5 o'clock. And I believe that I'm going to do some sort of happy hour Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock my time. For anybody who wants to tune in, we'll have a giant Zoom call, and I'll be raising a glass of whiskey probably at that point. Well-deserved, well-needed after 3 days of talking. So yeah, we'll wrap it up like that. But it should be a great event. I'm looking forward to it.
Where can people opt in for that? Whether they want to come for free or they want to upgrade?
Yeah, if they head on over to theagentsofchange.com, they'll find all the information on the summit, as well as links to our podcast and our annual conference if they want to come to Vacation Land, also known as the state of Maine.
In my head, it's just where people go in cartoons to go and watch the leaves fall. Have I got the right place?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not the only state known for that, but that is a big thing, is in late October is the leaves start to change. So that's a big thing. And also people come here for the lobster. Some people come to see moose. And in the next couple of weeks, people are going to come for the eclipse. I'm actually driving up north so I can be right in the heart of where the eclipse happens.
Right. Well, I'm just, sorry. Well, as you talk about eclipse, there's all these conspiracy theories are rolling through my head. I'm thinking, it's just so entertaining. Anyway, Rich Brooks, you have been great fun. I've really enjoyed myself. It's been lovely to meet you. I would love to have you back again sometime, and we can maybe jump into some more tactical things. But this time, it's been really nice to find out about you, your perspective, your world, what's going on, why you do things the way you do, which for me is lovely to watch. But before I let you go, I need to ask you one question, which is, what's one thing you do now that you wish you'd started 5 years ago?
So there's a lot that I might think of when it comes to this, but I would say one of the biggest shifts that I've made, and I wish I'd known this so much longer ago, is really getting out of the way of my team. So a few years ago, I decided I'm not going to do any more client work. I am not good at it. I am not the expert in anything anymore. I am that generalist. So I think one of the things that I wish I knew when I first started is hire the best people you can afford, whether they're internal or external. Focus on the places that you add value, the places where it doesn't even feel like work. And for me, it's creating content and getting up on stage. And selling. I like this process of sales. That's what I focus on these days. All the day-to-day stuff, all the things that make my client happy, that's all taken care of by my team, who are all much smarter than I ever could be, at least in their specific areas. So that's probably the number one thing I wish I knew earlier on.
That is a really, really good answer. Thank you for that. And again, thank you so much for coming. It's been really nice to meet you.
You too, Bob. Thank you.
So that does bring us to the end of another episode. For you at home for watching, thank you so much for listening. You're awesome too. If you did enjoy this episode, you will love the Personal Brand Business Roadmap. It's everything you need to start, scale, or fix your expert business. It's 50 pages. As a gift from me, you just visit amplifyme.agency/roadmap. Thank you for listening or watching, and see you next time.